September 11th marks the anniversary of the terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon in 2001. That date has become a day of remembrance, now called Patriot Day, when we remember the strength and perseverance we showed as a country. Why is this event so strong in our memory? Probably because it is the most momentous tragedy we've ever experienced on our home soil in our lifetime. There's nothing else we've experienced so closely and so significantly that we can compare it to. As with Pearl Harbor Day for earlier generations, just about anyone over the age of 25 or 30 can remember exactly where we were and what we were doing at the moment we heard about the unexpected horror of being attacked by man-made missiles full of human lives. For those of us who lived in New York or Washington, D.C., or near Shanksville, Pennsylvania, there's an added sense of personal association with this milestone in our history. In hindsight, there have been far worse tragedies and disasters in history, where many thousands or millions of lives were lost. But this was different. As Americans, we took it personally, because it was an invasion of our space. We watched it happening real time, and it changed our life in many ways. Despite the words I'm using, I have learned that the years can heal a lot. While there are unpleasant memories, it's best to look positively on what we see as a bad situation. Yes, it was tragic. Yes, thousands of people lost their lives, and many thousands more lost friends, colleagues, and loved ones in the attacks. But we also have a lot to be grateful for. We have learned lessons from this experience, and this is what we'll be focusing on today. The lessons of September 11th, and how we have gained from the tragedies in our life. The World Trade Center towers were for many years the tallest buildings in the world, a marvel of engineering and human ingenuity. Our country saw it as something to be proud of, a symbol of our nation's strength and influence. The Pentagon is the largest office building ever created, a symbol of power, and to some, aggression. And these perceptions might have been what led to their destruction, triggered by the bitterness of those who may have resented what the two largest office complexes in the world represented to them. You might say these buildings were a modern-day version of the Tower of Babel, humanity's quest for dominion over everything. Let's take a look at the story of the Tower of Babel, found in Genesis chapter 11, verses 1 through 9. All people on the earth had one language and the same words. When they traveled east, they found a valley in the land of Shinar and settled there. They said to each other, "Come, let's make bricks and bake them hard." They used bricks for stone and asphalt for mortar. They said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the sky, and let's make a name for ourselves so that we won't be dispersed all over the earth." Then the Lord came down to see the city and the tower that the humans built. And the Lord said, "There is now one people, and they all have one language. This is what they've begun to do, and now all they plan to do will be possible for them. Come, let's go down and mix up their language so they won't understand each other's words." Then the Lord dispersed them from there all over the earth, and they stopped building the city. Therefore it is named Babel, because there the Lord mixed up the language of all the earth, and from there the Lord dispersed them all over the earth. Again, that's Genesis chapter 11, verses 1 through 9. In this allegory, the people of the world are the descendants of Noah, who went forth and multiplied after the flood. They decide to work together to build a tower as a symbol of their strength and importance. The name Shinar, the ancient name of Babylonia or modern-day Iraq, is the Hebrew name that means divided rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates. Metaphysically, it represents a divided mind, belief in two powers, evil as well as good, and the resulting errors. Tigris represents rapid spiritual influx, while Euphrates represents nourishing. One side feeds our body, the physical, and the other feeds our spirit, the spiritual. With this in mind, Shinar could also be interpreted as being divided between our physical and spiritual mindsets. The Tower of Babel represents self-serving interests. When we're looking for our personal glory in life, we tend to overlook our true purpose. The bricks and the mortar were made from mud and clay from the earth, which represent the consciousness of the physical body. The Babylonians are acting from a place of earthly, ego-based consciousness rather than a place of spirituality. They traveled to the east to arrive in Shinar. East represents the within, reverence and rich gifts inspired by inner wisdom. The story specifies that Shinar was in a valley, which indicates a lower point in awareness or consciousness. So in this case, the reverent gift, the construction of a tower reaching toward heaven, was still centered on physical, material substance rather than spiritual principles. The word Babel means confusion, perhaps the origin of our modern word babble when someone rambles incoherently, like I'm doing now. And of course, the Lord represents natural law. In this story, a personified God has bestowed confusion and chaos on the situation to disrupt the ego-based focus of the people. Of course, we're not talking about a person named God, but rather the expression of natural law and how the universe is governed by it. Metaphysically, it represents what happens when we think we can comprehend and contact the divine in earthly, physical ways. Confusion is always the outcome. It brings to mind a popular bumper sticker inspired by traditional religious philosophy. No God, no peace. No God, no peace. The first phrase starts with the word no, N-O. Without God, there is no peace. The second phrase starts with the word know, K-N-O-W. When you know God, you know peace. Our principles express it in a little bit different way. We create our own happiness or unhappiness based on how we live in harmony or discord with natural laws. When we fail to work in harmony with the law or the Lord, represented by spiritual tigress consciousness, we experience chaos in our earthly experiences, that ego-based Euphrates consciousness. So how does this connect with September 11th? Well, let's think about the Twin Towers as a modern-day symbol of the Tower of Babel. No, the circumstances aren't the same, but there are significant parallels that illustrate our lesson. First, the Twin Towers are a marvel of human ingenuity and skill. Just like the descendants of Noah, 20th century humans had a desire to build a tower to reach the heavens as a way to demonstrate our human will and strength. Some might argue in either situation, it was a way to physically be closer to a perceived heaven rather than relying on our inner spirituality. Next, the Twin Towers were both literally and figuratively a symbol of human focus on material superiority. They made a name for American strength in commerce and as a world power, just like the people of Babylon desired to make a name for themselves in ancient times. Thirdly, some people saw the World Trade Center towers as symbols of self-serving interest, just like the symbolic meaning of the Tower of Babel. And in the scripture, a personified God mixed up languages and moved people to faraway lands, creating chaos and rendering the tower impossible to complete. In New York, the towers were destroyed, creating chaos, disrupting the process of commerce, and rendering the buildings useless. When the Twin Towers came down, people didn't know what to do. There was fear and despair, forcing people to depend on strangers for comfort and assistance. In the scripture, the chaos was created by language and distance. People couldn't communicate verbally, forcing them to find new and creative ways to depend on each other. In both situations, the world seemed relatively harmonious. In Shinar, everyone spoke the same language and had common interests. In America, we were at relative peace, and we were focused on the American dream. All seemed well until chaos forced the people of both nations to realize how important spirituality is, that the comfort we find in everyday life is just an illusion, and it can be so much more. One of the most interesting similarities is that neither situation has a defined ending. The life of the people in Shinar continued on with many new diverse cultures. The life of Americans goes on with new vigilance and understanding. The stories are different, but the lessons are similar. The metaphysical interpretation of the Old Testament, an educational tool published by Unity, describes the lesson pretty succinctly. We can learn something from the negative lesson in this allegory if we remember that the city or tower was not named Babel until the end of the story. It is clear that the project was started without confusion. In fact, there was a harmony of sorts, since the whole earth had one language. Then verse 4 becomes very significant. Then they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city, and a tower with its top in the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves." The lesson here then teaches what happens when we engage in an exercise of our human will with no awareness of divine will. Although our human will may seem harmonious, there's no true harmony without divine will. The inevitable result of such an exercise is always confusion and chaos, the offspring of vanity. Our thinking becomes scattered or disintegrated when our own human will is in charge. And that's from the interpretation of the Old Testament published by Unity. September 11th is a day of remembrance, but our focus should not only be on remembering what we lost. We should also remember what we've gained, because that is what takes us forward instead of getting stuck in the past. So what do we have to be thankful for? Here are a few things. First, it could have been much worse. Yes, the two largest office building complexes in our country were attacked, but what if it had happened 2 hours later? The deaths might have been numbered in the tens of thousands rather than less than 3,000. It's a blessing that the attacks happened while people were still commuting to their jobs. Second, our citizens found a reason to come together as a unified body for the first time in many decades. For a few days, at least, there were no political parties, no griping about the economy or taxes, no judgment about religion or race. We were truly Americans and a world united. Despite all of our fear and anger, and maybe because of it, for a few days, a few weeks, we had the closest thing that we may ever experience to true peace on earth. We thought that that energy of oneness and compassion would last forever, and it has. All we need to do is remember it from time to time. We're safer and stronger. Does that mean there won't be more terrorism? I doubt it, but we've learned to keep our eyes and ears open and be more vigilant in identifying potential harm so that it might not happen. Most importantly, we realized that we can survive just about anything. As bad as it was, we did survive. A little bruised, but we survived. We've moved forward, and we're stronger. And now, a new tower stands even higher above the former ruins in New York City. The Pentagon has been restored so beautifully that you can't even tell where the damage occurred. People go to work in these buildings every day thinking about their jobs and their lives and the beautiful new spaces around them, rather than thinking about the tragedies that happened in those very spaces. We are resilient. Is this a perfect world? No, it isn't. It never was, and it probably never will be, nor should we ever expect it to be. It is that imperfection that helps us grow and learn every day, and that is a good thing. The events of 9/11 remind us that we are here, we have found love in our hearts, and we are ever progressing toward a true spirit of mutual care, respect, and unity. Sometimes we need a little chaos to stir up some confusion in our lives. It reminds us to appreciate the blessings that we have. If everything was perfect all the time, it would seem so ordinary that we'd hardly even notice it, and we wouldn't have as much inspiration to learn and grow. On the 10th anniversary of the attacks in 2011, the President of the United States spoke of this day of remembrance. Perhaps his words say it best. Even the smallest act of service, the simplest act of kindness, is a way to honor those we lost, a way to reclaim that spirit of unity that followed 9/11. The lesson is so clear. Despite the chaos and confusion we experience in our lives, and despite our tendency to focus on our many differences, We as humans certainly have far more to appreciate and celebrate in the commonalities we share as one great, collective, divine expression of God consciousness. Every challenge we encounter is a lesson that helps us to be wiser and stronger. There will be bumps along the way, but September 11th will always remind us of which direction we're trying to go, and the importance of focusing on divine will instead of getting confused by our ego-based thoughts. Blessings to you and your family, and to the families who lost loved ones on 9/11 or in any other tragedy in history. So many years ago, we said, "We will rebuild," and the results instantly began to manifest from that single thought. We have so much to be thankful for. Many blessings. For more lectures and meditations, please visit our website at www.meditatewnc.org. Thank you for joining us.